Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we unearth the most interesting facts from mountains of research. Today we're talking about monogram machines and the surprisingly intricate world of personalized stitching. I used to think monogramming was just for fancy towels, you know?
Right.
But I've been doing some digging, and there's so much more to it than I ever imagined. So to guide us through this deep dive, we have our expert.
Hi, everyone.
So let's jump right in. We'll start with a blast from the past, uncovering the history of monogramming and how we got to these amazing machines we have today. So let's start with you. What's the history of monogramming? Like, where did this whole thing even begin?
Well, it might surprise you to know that monogramming actually has a really long history. Like, we're not just talking about, Victorian ladies embroidering their linens. It goes back centuries to ancient civilizations. They used to mark their belongings with their initials.
Wow, so like a Stone Age status symbol?
Haha, pretty much. It's like this fundamental human impulse to personalize things, to say, hey, this is mine, or this represents who I am.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like, even today, people love putting their own spin on things, whether it's a custom phone case or a monogram tote bag. So it's cool to see that desire for personalization has been around for so long.
Definitely. And as we move through history, we see that the motivations behind monogramming, they sort of evolved along with technology. So for centuries, it was all about hand stitching, really meticulous and time consuming.
I can only imagine.
But then the Industrial Revolution happened, and suddenly everything changed.
Enter the sewing machine.
Exactly. The invention of the sewing machine in the mid-1800s was a game changer because it laid the groundwork for the mechanization of embroidery. And then in the 1860s, this truly groundbreaking invention emerged, the Schiffley embroidery machine.
Say that 5 times fast.
I know, right? But this machine, it was incredible. It used a continuous thread and a shuttle system to create these really intricate patterns. And it could do it at a speed that was previously unimaginable.
So that was like the first step towards automation in embroidery.
It was. It wasn't just for lettering, though. It could handle more complex patterns, too, which really paved the way for faster production and more elaborate designs.
So I'm picturing like ornate embroidery on clothing and linens and flags.
Exactly. And think about the impact this had on society. Suddenly, embroidery, which was once a luxury for the elite, became much more accessible to a wider population.
That's really interesting. So it wasn't just about the technology itself, but also how that technology influenced fashion and culture.
Yeah, it's all interconnected.
So I'm curious, did the Schiffley machine lead directly to the modern monogram machines we have today? Or were there other important developments along the way?
Well, there were definitely other innovations. For instance, in the early 1900s, multi-head embroidery machines were developed. These machines could embroider multiple garments at the same time, which obviously increased production speed like crazy.
So it was like a mini factory on your workbench.
Exactly. It was a huge boost for businesses trying to keep up with the growing demand for personalized goods.
And then came the rise of the machines. The digital revolution hit the embroidery world.
Yeah, the 1980s saw the arrival of computerized embroidery machines, and it totally changed the game. Because instead of relying on pre-programmed patterns or painstakingly adjusting these mechanical settings, you could suddenly create and edit designs digitally.
It must have been like magic.
Pretty much. You could digitize intricate patterns and lettering and even images, and then feed that information directly into the machine, and it would stitch it out with incredible precision, like nothing we'd ever seen before.
So it was like going from hand-drawn blueprints to computer-aided design.
Exactly.
But did this new technology make embroidery more accessible to hobbyists too?
At first, those early computerized machines were pretty expensive, and they were really complex to operate, so they were mostly used by professionals.
So like a high-end tool for the embroidery elite.
Something like that. But as technology advanced, the costs came down, and the software became a lot more user-friendly, so eventually hobbyists could get in on the action too.
So cool. So anyone with a creative spark could suddenly create their own embroidered masterpieces.
Exactly.
And that makes me think about the whole distinction between monogramming and embroidery in general. Like, I know a lot of people use those terms interchangeably, but I'm guessing there's a subtle difference, right?
There is. It's a common misconception that monogramming and embroidery are the same thing. But while monogramming is technically a type of embroidery, it has its own unique characteristics. It's kind of like how all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares.
That's a helpful analogy. So what are those key characteristics that set monogramming apart?
Well, monogramming tends to focus on personalization through initials or short names, and it often uses a single color. the designs are usually simpler, with an emphasis on clarity and elegance. Whereas embroidery can encompass a much wider range of designs. Like you could have intricate patterns, logos, even multicolored landscapes or photorealistic images.
So it's like the essence of personalization versus the art of embellishment. A monogram is like a signature, a mark of identity, while embroidery can be a whole story woven into fabric.
You got it.
And if we delve into the etymology of the word monogram, it actually reinforces that distinction, because the word comes from the Greek mono, meaning single, and gramma, meaning letter. So originally a monogram really meant a single letter, used as a personal mark or symbol.
Yeah, like a brand.
Exactly. But these days we see monograms that incorporate multiple letters, often intertwined in these beautiful ways. It's still about personalization, but with a more artistic flair.
It is. And that evolution of the term mirrors the evolution of the craft itself, from those simple single-letter markings. Monogramming has expanded to embrace more complex designs, incorporating flourishes and decorative elements and even small motifs.
It's amazing how something as simple as a few stitched letters can have such a rich history and nuanced meaning.
It is pretty fascinating.
How do these things actually work?
Okay, so at its core, a monogram machine is essentially a specialized type of embroidery machine, and they all operate on a similar principle. You have a needle that moves up and down, creating stitches in the fabric, and those stitches are guided by a computerized pattern. That tells the machine exactly where to go.
So it's like a robotic seamstress.
Exactly.
But there are different types of monogram machines, right?
Oh yeah, there are tons of different models out there, from basic embroidery machines that can handle simple lettering and designs to these really high-end combination sewing and embroidery machines that can do it all.
So how do you know which machine is right for you?
Well, it depends on your needs and your skill level. If you're just starting out, a basic machine is probably a good place to begin. They're typically more affordable, and they're easier to learn. But if you're planning on doing a lot of embroidery, or if you want to create more complex designs, then you might want to invest in a more advanced machine.
So what are some of the key features to look for in a monogram machine?
Okay, so one of the most important things is the embroidery area size. This basically determines how big of a design you can stitch out. So if you're planning on doing large projects, like monogramming a quilt or a jacket, you'll need a machine with a larger embroidery area.
What about the design libraries?
Oh yeah, those are super important too. Most machines come with a built-in library of designs, but some machines allow you to import your own designs, which gives you a lot more creative freedom.
And what about lighting?
Yeah, good lighting is essential because you need to be able to see what you're doing, especially when you're working with small details. Some machines have built-in LEDs, which provide really bright and even illumination.
Are there any other features that can make a big difference in terms of usability?
Let me think. Oh yeah, automatic threading. That's a lifesaver. Because threading a needle can be a real pain, especially if you have bad eyesight. Some machines can thread the needle for you, which saves a ton of time and frustration.
It sounds amazing. Like it's the little things that can make a big difference.
Totally.
So we've talked about the hardware. But what about the software side of things?
Oh yeah, the software is just as important as the machine itself, because it's what allows you to create and customize your designs. There are tons of different embroidery software programs out there, and they range in complexity and price. But basically, they all allow you to do things like choose your fonts and colors, add decorative elements, and even resize and rotate your designs.
So it's like a digital art studio for embroidery.
Pretty much. And some software programs even allow you to convert images into embroidery designs, which is pretty cool.
You could take a photo and turn it into a stitched masterpiece.
Exactly.
That's mind-blowing.
It is.
So now that we've got a good understanding of the machines and the software, let's talk about some of the different monogramming techniques out there.
Okay, so one of the most common techniques is called satin stitch. It's basically a series of very close stitches that create a smooth and shiny surface. It's perfect for lettering and outlining designs.
I've seen that on like fancy bathrobes and stuff.
Another popular technique is called fill stitch, which is used to fill in large areas of a design. It creates a more textured look. And it's often used for things like floral patterns or logos.
So satin stitch for the outline and fill stitch for the inside.
Exactly.
And then there's applique.
Oh, yeah. Applique is a fun one. It involves attaching a separate piece of fabric to the base fabric using embroidery stitches. It's a great way to add dimension and texture to your designs.
It's like a fabric collage.
Kinda.
And there are probably tons of other specialized techniques out there.
Oh yeah, there are so many. Like you can do things like create 3D embroidery or use metallic threads. or even incorporate beads and sequins.
It's amazing how versatile this craft is.
It really is.
There's always something new to learn. So I'm curious, what are some of the biggest mistakes that beginners make when they're first starting out with monogramming?
Let me think. I'd say one of the most common mistakes is not using the right stabilizer. Stabilizer is this backing material that you put behind your fabric to help prevent it from puckering or stretching during embroidery. And if you don't use the right type of stabilizer, your design can end up looking all messed up.
So it's like the foundation of a good embroidery project.
Exactly.
What about choosing the wrong needle?
Yeah, that's another common mistake. Different needles are designed for different types of fabrics and threads. So if you use the wrong needle, you can break it
Yeah.
or damage your fabric.
Oh, it's important to do your research.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Take the time to learn about the different types of needles and stabilizers and choose the ones that are right for your project.
What about tension issues?
Oh yeah, tension can be tricky. If your tension is too loose, your stitches will be loopy and uneven, and if it's too tight, it can cause your fabric to pucker.
So how do you find that perfect tension sweet spot?
It takes practice, and it also depends on your machine and the type of fabric you're using. But there are a lot of resources available online and in embroidery books that can help you troubleshoot tension problems.
So don't be afraid to experiment.
Exactly.
And don't get discouraged if your first few projects don't turn out perfectly.
Embroidery is a skill,
Yeah.
and it takes time and patience to master it.
And lots of practice.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Now it's time to talk about fabric. You can't just monogram on anything, right?
Definitely not.
Some fabrics work better than others. So what are the top choices for monogramming? What should we be looking for in terms of quality and suitability?
Okay, well, natural fibers are always a good bet, like cotton and linen. They're known for their stability and stitch holding ability.
So they won't stretch out of shape or pucker when you're embroidering?
Exactly. They provide a nice smooth surface for the needle to glide over. And the stitches stay put, so you get a really crisp professional finish.
So cotton and linen are like the gold standard of monogramming fabrics.
Pretty much.
But are there specific types of cotton or linen that are particularly good?
Oh yeah, definitely. Quilting cotton is a popular choice. It's thicker and more durable than regular cotton, so it's perfect for things like tote bags, tea towels, or even baby blankets.
What about linen?
Linen is great too. It has this beautiful natural texture, and it's very breathable, so it's often used for things like napkins, table runners, or summer clothing.
I love the look of linen. It's so elegant. Okay, so we've talked about cotton and linen. What about denim? It seems like it would be a good choice because it's so sturdy.
You're right, denim is a great option for monogramming. It can handle the stitching without puckering or distorting, and it adds a nice casual vibe to personalized jackets, bags, or hats.
So what about fabrics to avoid? Any materials that are just a nightmare to monogram?
Yeah, definitely stay away from stretchy or slippery fabrics like jersey satin or silk. They can be really tricky to work with because they tend to bunch up or shift during embroidery.
So those are the fabrics that'll make you want to tear your hair out.
Pretty much.
So it's best to stick with stable, natural fibers for the best results.
Exactly.
And speaking of results, let's talk about some tips and tricks for creating really stunning monogrammed projects.
Okay, so first things first, always pre-wash and iron your fabric before you start embroidering. This will help to prevent any shrinkage or wrinkles from happening after you finished your project.
Good tip.
And use a good quality stabilizer, as we talked about before. Stabilizer is essential for preventing your fabric from puckering or stretching during embroidery. So don't skimp on this step.
What about needles?
Right, always use the correct needle for your fabric and thread type. And change your needle frequently. Like after every 6 to 8 hours of stitching, a dull needle can cause all sorts of problems.
So it's better to be safe than sorry.
Exactly.
What about thread?
Use high quality embroidery thread. It will look better and last longer. And don't be afraid to experiment with different colors and textures.
I love that. Embroidery is all about expressing your creativity. And speaking of creativity, don't be afraid to think outside the box when it comes to design.
You can monogram just about anything, from clothing and accessories to home decor and gifts.
And you can use all sorts of different fonts and motifs.
The possibilities are endless.
And don't forget about the personal touch.
Yeah, a monogram is a great way to add a personal touch to a gift.
So if you're ready to start your own monogramming journey, we're here to help. Reach out to us on WhatsApp at +234 8129 7940. We have a fantastic selection of embroidery machines, perfect for all skill levels. And with our 1-year warranty and active online support, you'll be stitching like a pro in no time. Until next time, happy stitching.